Hello, I am Beth and I am back for another live. I am a marriage coach and certified hypnotist. I am a mom of three wonderfully crazy little men and a wife to my husband Neil of 13 years. And we have a great guest on today. I have Andy Hill joining me. He is from Marriage, Money, and Kids, and he is an expert of all things when it comes to money and families. So we're going to discuss this super in-demand topic, how to end fights about money in your marriage. And with grocery prices on the rise, fuel costs on the rise, housing costs on the rise, what a better time to be having a conversation about money because it causes so much stress in households. So let me introduce Andy before he pops on. So like I said, he is from Marriage, Kids, and Money, and he has been featured in a ton of different major media publications like CNBC, Forbes. We have, let's see here, NBC News as I let him in. And his personal and his financial experiences have been documented in these wonderful media publications. He is also, he has kids himself, and so when he's not talking about money, he's watching soccer, he's watching their singing, he's watching Marvel movies with his family. And here he is. Andy, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you just fine. Sometimes this technology overwhelms me and I curl up into a ball on the floor. So
Yes, I can hear you. There's, like, in the world of online businesses, tech is always an ongoing issue.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. Like, more than ever, I think finances are stresses in family household. Like, gas prices are crazy, grocery prices are on the rise, budgets seem tighter than ever, but you have these amazing strategies that can get households, families, wives, husbands to a place where you don't have to stress about money so much. You have claims that people can be mortgage free faster, you can retire faster. Like, this sounds like a dream life. So let's start off with, just tell me a little bit about yourself. You have kids, you've been married. How long have you been married? How old are these kids?
Yeah, I've been married to my wife, Nicole, for almost 12 years now. Time flies when you're having fun. And we live in the Michigan area, southeastern Michigan area. And I have two kids. Zoe is 10 and Calvin is 7, and I love them to pieces.
Oh
That's
my
what's up with
gosh.
me.
We are in very similar stages of life. I'm 13 years married and my kids are 6, 8, and 10. So busy times, expenses.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of women I work with, they are fighting about finances. Finances are tight, and where do we start with all this? So I guess what are some of the major causes of fights about money when you hear, or stresses when it comes to marriages?
Yeah, I can speak from our perspective as well as some of the couples I've had the chance to coach. A lot of it is just a disagreement on what you value with regards to money, you know? So some person might really enjoy doing such and such with the money, and another person really might enjoy doing another thing. And sometimes those two worlds are difficult to combine because we really don't take the time to empathize. So, for example, let's say one spouse really likes going out and shopping for nice clothes, and another spouse enjoys golfing or whatever, going out or something like that. Since either one of them maybe don't enjoy that activity themselves, it's hard to empathize and see why that's important. Or if it's not important to me, then it's definitely not important at all. But I think when we take time to sit down and understand why that spouse maybe likes to go off shopping, another spouse enjoys golf or whatever it is, we can really understand that that's very important to them. So I think there's lots of fights that can happen around this designated fun money or whatever you decide is important because it's not important to you. But if we take the time to sit down and realize what type of fun we like to have in our relationship, what type of fun we like to have personally, I think that can go miles. And maybe we don't have to agree that it's how you would spend your money, but it's a great way to have a conversation, understand why they like it. And if it's important to them, it should be important to us.
I think that's a great tip. It's really understanding their needs and coming from a place of that they're not just being frivolous with money, that this is something they really need to spend money on because it brings them such happiness and joy in their lives, right? What if one partner is more into fun money and is spending more money than the other partner, and it seems really unbalanced and unfair? And that's creating some conflict because one partner is out golfing every weekend, spending $80 on a round, while the other partner's at home watching the kids. What do we do then?
Yeah, I think that comes down to just having more conversations about what's important to you. So I like to use the budget as both the good guy and the bad guy in this situation because the budget can help be sort of that contract between the two of you that says, hey, before the month begins, here's what we agree upon that's fair and equitable in our marriage, right? And fair obviously is a favorite F word for some people, but fair is different for everybody, right? And fair is different from your relationship from somebody else's relationship. So find out what's fair in your relationship by utilizing a budget. And sometimes the budget can feel like, oh man, I don't really want to make one of those things. That sounds really boring. But think of it as sort of a contract between you and your spouse about what you both agree on and what you both want to have as your family values. Once you set those family values and say, here's what's important to us, it's helping our kids get to college and not experience student loan debt like crazy. It's getting out of the student loan debt that we're currently in, or it's eventually being able to go down to part-time because that's really exciting for me. As long as you're putting those values up there and then utilizing the money to get those things, then you're moving in the right direction. And while you're having these conversations, you can and you can say, hey, this is really important to me. I know we're working towards these goals and savings and investing. It's all very important, but I still want to be able to enjoy a little bit of my time with the guys, or I really want to be able to go out and do something with my lady friends, and I need some money for that. So what's fair between the two of us that we can figure out? If we use the budget as sort of this contract of our relationship of how we're going to spend the money, you guys make an agreement at the beginning of the month, and by that time the agreement is set. You can move about your month in freedom, right? You don't have to worry about coming home with that bag and having somebody stare at you, or going off and doing the thing that you agreed upon, as long as it's in the time, and it's as long as it's in the schedule and in the budget that you agreed upon. So I think having those conversations at the beginning of the month, planning out your schedule and your budget, can help alleviate some of these fights that might happen throughout the month. The trick is making the time to actually sit down and have those conversations. That's the key. So if it's not on your schedule, put it on your schedule, because it is just as important as that important business meeting or that doctor appointment. Make it important by putting it on the schedule.
Absolutely. And I hear two things here. One is communication. A lot of couples don't know how to communicate. They come to me because they're like, we can't communicate. Everything turns into a fight.
Yeah.
So if they can schedule that budget time, they then sit down and start talking about this budget, but the communication isn't there. Can they have this conversation about a budget? Because if they're talking about what's fair and it starts to get heated, I have some strategies that I use with the women, because really, like we just said, it's not really about the money. There's often, if you're starting to fight about things, there's sometimes some ingrained beliefs from childhood. And we can go deep into this. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are. We'll talk about communication in a second, but what about the money beliefs that we bring into our marriage? So, and those are actually causing hurdles with having these conversations. What do you see in terms of money mindset and upbringing?
Well, I think it absolutely defines who we are as a person, honestly, and what we care about with regards to money. So when we come into a relationship, if we grew up and money was really tight, then that's really going to probably affect how, when money comes into our world now, we might want to hold on to a lot more of it because it makes us feel good. Or we had no money growing up and we want to spend a lot of it because it's new to us and we never had this thing before. I think for partners to understand those motivations and understand how their partner grew up, I think it's important to understand, and that'll help you empathize even further, being like, okay, he's doing this because of XYZ in his childhood, or he's doing this because his mother and father raised him like this, and he's proud of those roots. So I think once you take a step back and try to empathize a little bit about why your spouse might be acting like that, something that has nothing to do with your relationship at all, or even before you met, it has nothing to do with you. It has something to do with how they were raised and the beliefs that they came across during their childhood. So I think understanding a lot of those things and stepping back and saying, okay, maybe that's why. Now that I have empathized and understand a little bit where they're coming from, how can I better approach this conversation to make it fair and equitable and fun and happy in our relationship?
Yeah, it's so true. Understanding what you're bringing into the marriage based on your own past, like getting curious, like how was I brought up, and maybe how do I need to change my mindset when it comes to this? And often you don't even know. often you don't know until those fights are coming up. So I always say every time you feel triggered, anytime like anger comes up or frustration or not feeling like things are fair, those are times to deep dive into yourself instead of projecting that onto your partner, because those are your emotions. I always say we own our emotions. Your partner never makes you feel angry that he's spending money. That's actually something that you feel on the inside, whether it's a lack mindset, like you just said, whether it's we didn't have money and now you're spending money. Because I know women who have, like, they have, to say they had $10,000 in the bank, they still don't feel like they have enough. Like they just never feel like they have enough. They're just in the scarcity mindset, like it's just going to go away. So working on some of that mindset stuff around money, I think, is really important before you even have those conversations. Or if you're finding conversations are really triggering, where you're just constantly blowing up in fights, doing some inner work first before you can have those conversations. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your point on these moments that defined us, that make us act the way we are. I've had some of those moments personally in my life. I've had some financially traumatic things happen in my life. And what traumatic might be for somebody else is very different for me. But I bought a home in Metro Detroit during the earlier on from the Great Recession. And then when the Great Recession happened, the home value was cut in half. And I felt owned by my home. I felt like now I own this thing that's valued at $100,000, but I still owe $200,000 on it. How could this happen? I'm such a smart homeowner. I bought the house right when I graduated from college. It's a smart thing to do. It really affected me. And I from that moment forward, I said, I never want to be owned by my home again. I never want to have a mortgage hanging over my head that forces me to work at a job that I don't like. I don't want to have a home that just makes me feel trapped inside of it. So from that point on, my goals sort of were redefined, with regard to my relationship and my marriage and going forward. I said, I never want to have that again. So when my wife wanted to buy our next family home, our place that we were going to raise our kids, something in my background, something in my financially traumatic background said to me, okay, we'll go for it, but we're paying this thing off in 5 years. I do not want to have a mortgage hanging over my head and forcing me to work at a job that I don't like or just feel trapped. And so that's what we did. So sometimes these financially traumatic things or things that happened in our past can motivate us to do some cool stuff. And now we've been mortgage free for, well, man, 8 years, and it's helped us to do some incredible things. So the backgrounds that we have, the trauma that we've been through can sometimes propel us to do pretty cool things.
It's spot on. It's how you look at your challenges, your obstacles, your traumas from the past. Are you going to use them as gifts? Or are you going to wallow in them and let them continue to make you suffer now? So what a great way to look at that, whether it's financial loss or whether it's tragedy or death in the family, whatever it is, we take that and we got to spin it at some point once you've healed from it, of course. Spin
Absolutely.
it and then use those gifts that you've been given, those lessons, those ways that you've had to grow as a person, and act on those, which is a great example with that house. As we're talking about kind of some of this like background when it comes to marriages and some of the fights that we have, what about these beliefs? Like I've heard money is evil, you're being greedy. What about those beliefs that are coming in? How do you, because money isn't evil. And some people, I've heard this one too, money is not like there's only a certain amount of money. But I have a stance that money is unlimited. It's constantly flowing. It's like energy, and you can bring in as much as you really desire in your heart. So these are some stuck beliefs. There's only so much money. Money is evil. Don't be greedy. How do we deal with some of these mindset issues?
Yeah, and again, a lot of this can come back from maybe just how we grew up, maybe the way our parents raised us. I believe that money isn't evil. I just believe it's a tool that can be utilized to amplify who you already are. So if you're kind of a jerk already and you get a lot more money, then maybe you're going to be a bigger jerk. But if you are a kind person that cares about people, that wants to spread kindness in the world, give back, do incredible things, then money is only going to amplify who you already are. So I think money is just a tool, like we talked about. So working on yourself and who you are as an individual is more important than the tool of money. But if you're able to get more of it, like you said, it can be an abundant sort of thing. If you get more of it in your life, make sure it's amplifying those values that you've already set forth as an individual and as a family. If you said, hey, this is who we are going to be as a family, this is how we want to represent ourselves into the world. Getting more money into your life is only going to help you be a better giver, give back into the world, and help other folks. So I would say money's great. I guess I talk about money all day long, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of biased, I think. What do you think?
No, it's such a good thing though. So many people are scared of money, and that terror, that fear comes into those conversations. But I love the perspective money is a tool. You use a hammer to build a house, that built your house. Money, we can't always see it, especially nowadays. We don't always, like, how often do we have lots of money kind of in our wallet? Often it's just credit card, debit card. It's just so digital, e-transfers. But it's just, it's there, it can come, it can go, and it's a tool. And I like that perspective, like using it for what feels good, almost a little bit out of a place of service. Like, this is who we are, this is us authentically spending it. And then I think there's good behind it when you have good intention behind it.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the, building a house with a hammer. You could smash some windows with a hammer. Or you could build somebody a house. It's like, what are you going to do with that tool? To help somebody help you have a better life, or help somebody else have a better life.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about couples who in childhood they never witnessed budgeting? It's not something like, I know you have a ton of resources, but where do you start that process of learning how to even budget when we're talking about fights about money and they don't even know where to start?
Yeah, there's plenty of resources out there. I'm sure you have some yourself as well. What I would say the best way to learn this stuff is personal trial and error. Just giving it a shot. And also giving yourself the grace that you're going to mess up in the beginning. But you at least showed up, you sat down on the couch, whatever, you poured the glass of wine, you poured two glasses of wine, and they're sitting there saying, hey, I want to connect with you and talk more about our relationship and how we can use money as a tool to amplify who we already are as a couple and really get us to the place that we both want to be in. So here's a glass of wine. Let's start talking. And that first conversation might not even have a budget in it at all. It might just be connecting with your spouse for 30 minutes or 60 minutes where you're just saying, what are we doing? What's our goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Who do you want to be as a person in 10 years? Where do you see our kids going over their lifetime? Like, these conversations can open up so many doors that are so inspiring. Then you just take that inspiration and you plop it on the budget. The budget, again, becomes the tool. It doesn't have to be the interference in the conversation. The conversation is key. Sit down, have a conversation, and just open up the doors, and then use those tools to get you where you want to go.
I love that. Isn't that a fun conversation to have? It's like,
It
let's
is.
let's go with all the dreams, everything we want. Let's put it on paper, because I come from a manifestation stage, like manifestation perspective, where if you have a dream within you, it's actually already here. There's just blocks in the way, whether it's money mindset blocks or whether it's not feeling good enough, whether it's not, you don't feel loved, you don't feel heard, you don't feel seen. Like, there's reasons why that dream hasn't come out yet, but it's in you. If you want to travel like 2 times a year to some tropical place, you can do that. Or if you want to be, like you said, retired by 45, or if you want to have your mortgage paid off in 5 years, those are things that can happen. We just got to unblock and realize trust. There's a trust to this process, but there's also some rational planning that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of that. So we get all our dreams on paper. This is what we really want. Right now, we're barely making ends meet. What's the next step?
Yeah, well, I think the budget helps with that. So how much do we have coming in? That's the first part, the income, and how much is going out and where is it going? And based on where it's going, are we spending in alignment with those values that we just talked about with that glass of wine, saying, okay, we want to do this. This is what we want to do. Yay, you're all pumped up. Now, wait, are we spending money that helps us to get to that position? So reassessing where the money's going, grabbing control of it. Sometimes if we just look at our numbers, we see, wow, I can't believe I'm even spending that much money on that. I don't even like that. And it's like, whoa, okay. Just by sitting down and looking at it, you could save yourself whatever, $500 a month or $100 a month, whatever your budget is. Having that intentionality and looking at where the money's going, and then making sure it aligns to your values can be a big step in starting to move in that direction. Maybe you're only freeing up 1% or 2% or 3% to get towards those goals. But over time, when you start to decrease your expenses and then increase your income, you can start to increase that number to get towards those goals, whatever they are. Helping your kids get to college, helping you become mortgage free, helping you go down to a part-time income, helping you invest for retirement so you can say goodbye to the 9 to 5 during retirement time to relax. Those are important goals that can help you get where you want to go and relax a little bit more, which is great. So yeah, looking at those line items and making sure they're in accordance with your values.
Yeah. What if a couple feels like, there's nothing that can really go. Maybe it's the odd Starbucks coffee that can go. So there's like $5 one week. Maybe it's like we don't buy like certain brand names of grocery store items. We go with like no name ketchup, like, and there we're saving a couple bucks. Like, is that where we have to go sometimes with this? Is really analyzing like the nitty gritty of the grocery store list and the little stops along the way to different stores.
Well, if you're looking to make the biggest progress in the beginning, really, it's not going to be with your Starbucks coffee, really. It's going to be looking at those big items like housing, transportation, food. Those are the big three things that most people spend all of their money on. So by analyzing what you're doing with your housing situation, maybe you're paying a big payment on a leased car or something like that. Those can make big swaths on your budget. I mean, on the grocery side of things, my wife and I used to shop at Kroger. We would spend around $900 a month on groceries. We shopped over to Aldi. That saved us like $200, $300 a month. That might not sound alike, but that's about $2,000, $3,000 per year. That's a lot of money. And just kind of analyzing where the money's going. But I also like to look at areas that don't really kill our joy. You know, we talk about the coffee. We talk about the like, well, I still want to, go shopping every once in a while, buy some clothes, or I still want to go golfing sometimes. So I don't like to look at those areas first. I like to look at areas that can be negotiated, that you're already keeping, services you already have, like your cell phone or the cable bill or insurance. These are things that require us to kind of negotiate every couple of years to make sure we're getting the best price. So for example, homeowners insurance, things like that, auto insurance. If you ever notice, you look at that bill, it just kind of creeps up every couple of months up to a year. And you're like, wait a second, how am I paying like $500 more than I was just like a year ago? All it takes sometimes is a call back to your company saying, hey, what can you do to save me some money? And if they're not interested in saving you money right now, get 3 other quotes from other big companies like that'll be able to, cut your payment by $500. What they try to do is they try to get new customers, so they have these new customer incentives. So you can save $500 to $1,000 just by making some phone calls, and you get the same coverage you would have at another insurance agency. And then repeat the same thing with your cell phone company. I switched from Verizon to Tello Mobile, and I cut my bill in half, and our service is even better. There are companies out there that can help you save money and still get the services you like.
Yeah, what a great idea. Here, you cut it $100 here or there, you're saving a couple hundred per month. And it takes a little bit of effort, right? That's the thing. We kind of get complacent. We're like, I don't have time. I always say if you don't have time to do something, you're pretty much saying it's not a priority. So then you're saying saving money, getting that financial freedom to go on those trips, to pay off your mortgage, to retire early, that's not the priority. So you got to take these little steps, right? And spend that sometimes an hour on the phone with the insurance company, but that's 1 hour to save how much in the long run. So I think that's really key, is looking at your big three, looking at some of the negotiable services. Then is it when we start to look at maybe or do we even need to go there? Like, do you need to still have some fun? Like, I know some people who really cut their budget so tight that they're not having that much fun, and that's not like me.
I am not about deprivation, especially when it comes to conversations like this. I think it's a great way for us to have people just turn this Instagram live off. If we say, cut your coffee, all that coffee you love, get rid of that. No. We're not about that. We want people to enjoy life. So if there's little indulgences that you want in your life that help you enjoy your day, call it the gym membership, call it the coffee, whatever it is, these are things that enrich your life. Look at the big stuff first, and then, hey, if you need to look at the small stuff down the road just to get by, then you can do that. But what I would rather you do, instead of cutting out those important things that make you feel good inside, is look for ways to make a little bit extra money. Look around your house and see if there's anything you could sell on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, whatever. Nicole and I did this on our mortgage-free journey. We just looked around the house and said, hey, we got some baby gear here we can sell. We got some bikes that our kids have grown out of. I had a road bike because I was doing these triathlon races, and then I became a father and I had no time for triathlons anymore. Sold that, threw it all at our goals. So I think just looking around the house, no joke, if you spent a weekend cleaning up your house and looking what has value and listing it on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, I bet you get $500 to $1,000 just for that conversation, or just for that activity. And worst case scenario, you end up giving some stuff away that you don't use anymore and help enrich some other people's lives. So I think instead of going towards, what can I do to maybe I'll cut up my coffee, then that'll help you get there. Sell some stuff around your house, maybe get a little side gig to help you get where you want to go. But get rid of the coffee. I just can't do it. I just can't.
I
You can make the
love
coffee at
that.
home. I guess that's what we do. But
I love that. Bongo Retreats here had a great question. They have a fun jar for kids. So let's talk about kids and money. So they put money into a jar. The kids get to pick what they want to spend the money on. Let's talk about being good role models for your kids so maybe they don't have the same money experiences that you bring into your next marriage so that they feel like money isn't evil or it isn't a scarcity and it's something to celebrate almost and be like, this is a tool. Like, how do we teach our kids that it's a tool and not something to be like, oh, it costs that much? Like, I try to be very careful about how I talk about money, being like, okay, that's something we want. It's this much, instead of putting a negative tone, being like, I don't think we can afford that. Like, there's got to be a way to approach this with kids. Can you talk a little bit about tone and language when talking to kids?
yeah, I think that's great, and I think the intentionality of setting aside money for kids to enjoy and have fun is very important. Based on this conversation we're having, we do that with our kids. They do chores around the house, and based on their participation and help around the house, we give them $1 for every year they've lived. So my daughter's 10, we give her $10 a week, and we split that between fund money, we split it between savings, giving, and investing. So we have conversations around all four of these individual things. Money is fun. You can spend it and have a good time with it. What do you like? Oh, you like slime right now, sweetheart? Go get some slime. That's great. That makes you happy. My son, oh, you like Legos right now? Get some Legos, man. That's what you can do. When you work hard, you get a reward, and then you can have fun with it. These are just as important as the conversations that we have around saving, giving, and investing. But those three areas help to open up conversations for kids as well about the importance of putting a little bit aside for those things so they build up over time. And then when you look back on it, wow, this just happened to my daughter yesterday. She had been saving for years, really, with no specific purpose. But one day she said, Dad, I think I would like my own computer, my own Chromebook. And I said, okay, well, let's find out how much those are. It was about $100. She had $300 put away in her savings account. She bought herself her own computer. Now, how much pride is she going to have as a 10-year-old girl with her computer sitting in front of her saying, I bought that. I worked hard and I bought that. That's what I want for her. I want her to have that lesson. I want her to have that financial empowerment, especially as a young female, and just see what money can do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. My 10-year-old, he did that in July. Combination of savings, birthday money, and wow, wasn't that an exciting time for sure when they can spend their money on something. This is also a debate too. Do you do the online kind of piggy bank where it goes into like an app and they can see the balances, or do you kids need to see the physical jar? They see the 4 jars or the 3 jars, whatever it is you choose to use with the savings, the donation, and the investment. What are your thoughts on that?
We did the jars for a while. I thought it was important for them to physically see the money, but we're in such a digital world right now. The translation of paper money and coins to the digital world became so confusing for them that we just abandoned it. We went straight to digital buckets. We work with Ally as an online bank, and they have these digital buckets where you can separate within your savings, giving to family, giving to charities, and investing. So we take all of those and we have them spread out, and it's automated. We automate the whole process so it automatically goes from these individual accounts, and we love it. And the kids, before they want to buy something, they say, Daddy, can I look at the Ally to see how much I have in my account? And so she goes and she signs in and she looks at it and she says, oh, I got enough money to buy the slime that I saw on YouTube. And she goes and buys it with her own debit card. She's got her own debit card. And then again, the whole point for me is to empower her over time so that by the time she's 17, 18, she's doing this all by herself and she doesn't need dad or mom anymore to help her make these decisions. She knows that before I use this slidey card, I got to make sure I have enough money in my account to buy it. And that lesson right there, if we're going to do that over the next 4 or 5 years, she's never going to not buy something. She's never going to buy something without looking to see if she's got the money first. And I know that's a big struggle for a lot of adults. So the fact that we're doing that early is it's a proud dad moment right there.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Because money at that point is invisible. You don't really understand unless you're checking it. I used to teach high school kids and I would teach them the difference between debit and credit. We're talking like 13, 14-year-olds. They had no idea that the credit card actually was just like kind of borrowing money and you have to pay it back. They just saw it as this like vessel of like limitless money. So it's so important to talk about credit, debit, and just understanding that money's actually there and then you can spend it. The budgeting, I think that's phenomenal. Any other tips when it comes to marriages, money, kids, and making sure we reduce these fights and really make money look like, you know what, this is a tool for fun, to enhance our life, to kind of align with who we are authentically? how do we get to that? Like any other steps to how do we get to that place?
I guess I would say if money is sort of a taboo topic at home, I would say take some baby steps to start talking about it a little bit more because I think conversations and communication around important topics and like it or not, money is an important topic in our world. It makes things go round and it makes your lives better. It can make your lives better. So having some conversations around money, and if it feels uncomfortable at first, start small. Start with conversations around your kids at the grocery store where you're picking up items and saying, "Oh, this one is $4. Oh, this one is $10." Whatever, just so they understand that things have value and we can't get everything we want because money is finite and there's only that much money that we have in our budget. Even though you have the ability to get a lot more of it in the future, you've made the budget, you've decided here's what's important to us and here's what we can spend. So I think it's also important to see your kids say, or have your kids see you say no sometimes to some things that you want, where you're like, okay, I really want to do this, but you know what, right now we've got other priorities that my spouse and I have talked about, your dad and I have talked about, your mom and I have talked about that we're moving towards. So when they see you passionate about something that you're moving towards, they then get that passion as well, or they see that example of, okay, it's important to work hard together as a family towards something we care about.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I have one more question before we wrap this up. You brought up the idea of money being taboo, which is somehow, and I'm all about what's down deep, what's down there. Where'd that come from? But I've had a client, I remember her once saying, she's like, my husband keeps talking about how much my shoes, like how much his shoes were. He's like, he just mentions casually to people, like, yeah, these $150 shoes that I just got. Like, he's always naming prices. He has no problem, whether that's him showing off or whether him just being like, hey, yeah, these shoes were 150. It bothered her so much that he would talk about money, talk about like how much things cost, how much he made. And to her, those were taboo topics. You don't talk about money at all. What are your thoughts? Like, can you just talk to people about like, yeah, my salary is this, or this is how much this costs, this costs? Because sometimes people don't want to share that information. What are your perspective on how much money we talk, like, sorry, how, yeah, you talking to friends about how much things are? Is there limits to that, or can it just be whatever you feel comfortable with?
Well, I think it all depends on who you're talking to. I think you and I probably maybe are a little bit more transparent about these topics because we talk about it on a daily basis. Some people are very uncomfortable with it. Just like people don't like talking about whatever, politics or religion or whatever. You know, there's a reason that those maybe are taboo for people as well. So I think that it all is individual and it depends on the personal. Just like personal finance is personal, I think that some of these larger conversations are personal as well. So I think it depends on the person, and I think that having conversations, especially if it's with your spouse, being able to sit down and talk about the motivations around why am I talking about my $150 shoes. Maybe the person's less bragging and more they're just like maybe trying to boost themselves up and saying, okay, well, I grew up with $1.50 shoes, and now I'm wearing $150 shoes, and they make me feel proud. So maybe there's some background there that's a little deeper, like you're saying. But I think we won't understand that motivation until we have some conversations with that person. And if we're very close to them, we should have those conversations with them.
Yeah,
If it's
absolutely.
strangers or people we don't know a lot about money, then maybe we start small.
Yeah, so many tips today. Like really, communication. If it's not going well, you got to get step back and be like, what about me? What am I bringing into this conversation?
Yeah.
Once you can start to have those conversations, have fun conversations. I like this. Like really looking at money as a tool, continuing to have those conversations with your kids around, and really that'll foster amazing money mindset within your kids as well, and just financial intelligence. I don't know if that's a way to put it, but definitely having kids that can feel comfortable with money and know how to manage it. So these are great tips. So anyone watching, how can they find you? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, if you're here on Instagram, you can hang out with me at Marriage, Kids, and Money. I am posting goofy reels all the time about money and these conversations about family wealth and happiness. If you're into podcasts, I have a podcast called Marriage, Kids, and Money, and it's on any major podcast player.
Amazing. All right. And if any of your followers are watching me, I'm Beth Miller. I'm a marriage coach. I have a great guide called 3 Ways to Save a Marriage. If you're struggling with money or whatever it is within your marriage, check that out. Those 3 tips. It's www.freemarriageguide.com or in my bio. So, Andy, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. Feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any further questions after this live.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Andy.
Bye.